Welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Melissa Marote, and my pronouns are she and her, and we are very happy to have you here. And thank you for silencing your phones and wearing a mask. Please sign our online guest book or the guest book here to learn more about upcoming events. Please also plan to stay for our coffee hour after the service because we have a lot of food left over from yesterday's fundraiser. And there will also be a virtual coffee hour online. And if you would like to share joy or concern in the congregation later in the service, please write it in the virtual book of life. Or for those of you who are here, there's a physical copy behind Kevin, Mathie. We had an amazing time at the fundraiser yesterday. Last year. Time is flying by so quickly. No, we had a great time. It was from 2 to 5. It actually went a little bit longer, but a lot of people were here. There was a lot of fun, and we were signing up for all kinds of ways to get together and connect. And there was a raffle, lots of great times, good food. So thank you all so much for participating and coming to that and offering up different things. Attend. Not positive about this, but I'm guessing there might possibly still be openings for some of the events to bid on later, perhaps. Yes, I'm seeing a yes or Louise over. Okay, so if you weren't able to make it, you were sick or you forgot or you couldn't make it for whatever reason, there will still be an opportunity to bid on ways to get together with us for game nights or hikes or bird watching or learning how to cook certain things, all kinds of fun stuff. And after you grab a bite to eat today, consider staying for the environmental justice meeting after church. They will be meeting, I think, at noon. And then afterwards, participate in, I think it's called Ciclavia. Is that right? So where they've completely blocked off Sherman Way. All of Sherman Way is blocked off, welcoming people to bike, rollerblade, walk. It just kind of feels nice to take over the streets. So, also, please remember to continue bringing in your non-perishable items to the West Valley Food Pantry. We have quite a collection right here. We want to remind you that we're still collecting every week. This is definitely a time that people are in need of extra help. And I don't know if you've ever seen on the collection days, the line from Prince of Peace goes all the way down the street just for a very long while. It's kind of sad to see. So there's always need for the non-perishable items. So thank you for donating every week. And I want to begin by acknowledging that our church is built on land taken from those who have called it home for thousands of years. The nearby villages of Tatonga and Atwatsanga were a crossroads of cultures and languages for the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples. This land remains part of their enduring identity and heritage. We recognize that these tribes are still here, and we are committed to honoring their stories, culture, and community.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm the Reverend Chloë Briedé, and I'm happy to be here with you all this morning. I'm the minister here at Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. Our opening words, the words that call us into worship, are a poem by Judith Hill, and they're called Wage Peace. And as a fun side note, this poem is often misattributed to Mary Oliver. If you type it into Google, you'll sometimes get Mary Oliver and you'll sometimes get Judith Hill, and it is actually Judith Hill's poem. So this is Wage Peace by Judith Hill. Wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble, and breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Breathe in terrace and breathe out sleeping children and freshly mown fields. Breathe in confusion and breathe out maple trees. Breathe in the fallen and breathe out lifelong friendships intact. Wage peace with your listening. Hearing silence, pray loud. Remember your tools, flower seeds, clothespins, clean rivers. Make soup. Play music. Learn the word for thank you in 3 languages. Learn to knit and make a hat. Think of chaos as dancing raspberries. Imagine grief as the outbreath of beauty or the gesture of fish. Swim for the other side. Wage peace. Never has the world seemed so fresh and precious. Have a cup of tea and rejoice. Act as if the armistice has already arrived. Don't wait another minute.
Did you say dancing raspberries?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna file that away. These chalice lighting words are from Gabriel DeCio, a 3rd grader, so 8 years old, from Sacramento at Crocker Riverside Campfire, whose poem Peace says, "Peace is the blanket that covers the world with happiness. Peace is what calms the children. Peace is what soothes the trees. Peace is what quietly sneaks through the door. Peace is what the world wants." Profound words from a little guy. Now, if you would like to join me, you can please rise in body or spirit for the reciting of our covenant in English and Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su opción. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto. And now our hymn is 159 in the gray hymnal, "This is My Song."
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams the clover field and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for them and as for mine.
Welcome, all of you, to our service online and here in our sanctuary. Unitarian Universalists have many guiding principles and believe that we need not think alike to love alike. We are people of many beliefs and backgrounds, people with a religious background, people with none, people who believe in a God, people who don't, and people who let the mystery be. On the forefront of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer inclusion for more than 40 years, we are people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. We welcome you, your whole self, with all your truths and your doubts, your worries, and your hopes. If this is your first or second time visiting Emerson, then I extend to you a very special welcome and invite you to learn more about our guiding principles, which can be found in the Gray Hymnal. I encourage you to get involved in the things we offer here at Emerson, like small group ministries, book and vegetarian dining clubs, and there are going to be other offerings that you'll be able to see pretty soon from the fundraiser that you can participate in too. So we hope to see you at some of these events. Now let's take a moment to greet our neighbors.
It is good to be together. So our story this morning is the story of the first Advent wreath, and that's what I have up here as our prop for the story. And the story is by Todd Stalker. It was 1839, and for some reason, Johann rose from his rickety bed very tired. Maybe it was due to the change of seasons, most likely the exhaustion stemming from a combination of recent events. He established a mission school for wayward boys only a few years prior, was working on setting up yet another youth hostel several towns over, and had multiple writing and speaking engagements during the next few months. Yet Johann accepted that while his big initiatives in working with the youth, the poor, and the homeless took a toll, this day he knew the restlessness and tired feeling came from having to face one question that his young students would ask him incessantly this time of year. Is today Christmas? Not yet, he replied. God gives us moments to practice patience, and this is one of them. He knew they'd ask again tomorrow. In his heart, he was sick of the question. There has to be a way to keep the kids from asking this every single day. A thought came to mind, a holy idea, he said to himself. I'll build something that shows how many days are left until Christmas. A calendar of sorts. It was still early, but the wind had not settled down yet. Venturing to the barn that was a part of the initial property purchase, Johann pushed open the large, half-frozen door. A few birds flew out into the icy wind, only to return quickly for shelter of the drafty old building. Johann wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he knew there was something hidden somewhere in the dark, dusty corners that he could use. Scanning the piles of junk, sickles, moldy hay, drag chains, he saw it. In the far back corner, half covered by an old wheat sack, was an old discarded carriage wheel. And keep in mind, we're in Germany in the 1800s. Its hubs and spokes were intact, and much of the fallows onto which the spokes attached themselves were complete. The hard rubber that would have lined the fallows was mostly chewed away by the little critters that had made the spacious barn their home. No matter, Johann pulled it away from the sack and coughed a bit from the dust, and he smiled. He knew that if he could somehow use the wheel as a teaching tool about Advent, or the time leading up to Christmas, he would be able to build anticipation in his students, and as a side benefit, decrease his own frustration. But what could he use to show a daily marking that led towards Christmas? Maybe I could take a chalk and mark on the wheel for each day, he thought. Maybe I could attach a pine cone and take one off as we approach the holidays. Just then, through one of the countless gaps in the wall of the barn, a light beam shone through from the first morning sun and lit the whole barn in wondrous splendor. Light, Johann exclaimed. I'll use the light of candles each day. We need light in the classroom anyways. Why not make it a momentous teaching occasion? That afternoon, he walked briskly to the general store and asked Martha, the clerk at the establishment, for 25 candles, one for each day of December leading up to Christmas Day. That's a big ask, Pastor, Martha said from behind the waist-high counter. However, she knew he needed more than a normal amount to light the church for the upcoming Christmas service, just like we do. I only have a few out front, but let me check in the back for more, she said. Martha disappeared behind the curtain that separated the storefront from the back room. Johann couldn't stop smiling. The thought of visually seeing the upcoming Christmas celebration day dazzled his imagination. Interrupting his thoughts, Martha emerged with a wooden box filled with discarded, imperfect, and used candles. Here we are. You're more than welcome to use any of these, only half the normal price. Johann picked through the contents of the box. They weren't stunning by any means, but he was able to find 21 candles that he could use. Only a few matched each other in height and weight, but all of them were reddish in color. "I need 4 more, Martha," he said. "Well, we do have the ones on display, but they're only the white cream-colored ones." And she walked up to the shelf on the other side of the store. "I'll have to charge full price for these." Martha pulled the 4 candles from the shelf, and they were in perfect condition, never used, and all the same height and shape. "I'll take them all, Martha. Put them on the school account." He hurried back to the parsonage and began to assemble the Christmas is Coming candle calendar. He knew it would take some extra brain power to figure out how to set the whole thing up. Back at the barn, he placed the box of wayward candles out on the workbench. He lifted the heavy carriage wheel and plopped it on the bench next to the candles. Several of them rolled off and landed on the soggy hay beneath his feet. He proceeded to remove the rubber and reveal the whole wheel, and carefully he arranged the candles around it, shifting the places several times to find where they should go. After a few minutes of arranging, he realized he could use the 4 pristine white cream candles to mark the Sundays of the week. And there it was, the hub and the spokes leading out to a perfect ring of imperfect candles. He took 1 candle and lit it and used the wax to secure the candles around the wheel. But how would he display it to the students? He didn't have an extra desk on which to set it, and it was too heavy to hang from the ceiling. Besides, tomorrow was the beginning of the students' season of asking questions. He started looking around the barn for another holy idea, and there it was, an old dusty oak wood speaking stand that he used to carry around with him when he spoke at different churches and schools. It was standing next to another stack of old hay. After a quick modification, Johann fit the candle-laden wheel onto the stand and stepped back to admire his work. The chilled wind whistled through the poorly set parsonage window. Its noise woke Johann as it had multiple times before. But this next morning, he sprang out of his bed, stripped off his nightclothes, put on his day suit, all in one movement. The sun was still sleeping. Johann ran to the coal room in which Stefan, the property caretaker, slept. Stefan was in debt to Johann, not just for paid work, but for including his 4-year-old boy in the school, free of charge. Shaking his shoulder, Johann said, "Stefan, I need you. Reverend, it's too early to be up. What's so urgent? Just come, hurry, the children will be up soon." Stefan slowly unwrapped himself from his warmish bed and threw on his heavy wool coat and followed Johann to the barn. Like unveiling a new show horse, Johann pushed open the large barn door and proudly stood aside to show Stefan his creation. "What's that, Reverend?" "Help me move it into the classroom," Johann said as he motioned for Stefan to lift the heavy candle invention. They shuffled their way through the snow to the school, and Johann explained what this was. Kicking open the door to the school, Johann and Stefan still shuffled, pulling the little desks with the candle wheels, and several desks fell hard on the wooden floor, making a booming sound as they were trying to maneuver it around. "Let's move it to the front and center," he said, trying to whisper to not wake the children. They centered the piece in the pre-dawn lit classroom, still huffing and puffing, and Johann and Stefan stepped back shoulder to shoulder to admire the candle wheel. "Marvelous," they whispered. "Okay, let's get the desks set up again before the school day begins." Turning around, they noticed a little light just come into the classroom. It was Hans, Stefan's boy, rubbing his sleepy eyes and holding a tiny wicked lamp. "Papa?" Stefan glanced briefly at Johann and then stepped forward and picked up his son. "We heard a noise." "We?" Johann said. Slowly, the rest of the young students, still in their night clothes, shuffled into the room and filled it with the dim light of their little lamps. Johann and Stefan, who were still holding his boy, looked at each other. "Boys, I'm going to show you this today during our studies, but I guess this is good as of time as any." Johann and Stefan stepped back to reveal the perfectly imperfect Christmas candle wheel. The children hurried around it, touched its base and the outline of the hubs and spokes with their fingers, and there was excitement in the air. "How does it work?" they asked. "Well, I guess I can show you now. Can I borrow your lamp?" "Boys," Johann said, "I know you love Christmas. I also know that it's difficult to wait for this special day. So I created this Christmas candle wheel to show us when Christmas arrives. Each day we'll light one of the red candles and add another every day afterwards." "What about the white ones?" a boy asked. "Those are different because we light those on Sunday, our special day of worship." Hans then said, "Let's light them now." No, we'll light them one at a time," Stefan said. "It's okay. Actually," Johann said, "I'll light all of them right now to show you what it will look like in a few weeks. The candle will be fully lit and illuminate the room." "So when all the candles are lit," they asked, "does it mean that today is Christmas?" The whole room erupted in joyful Christmas laughter as they lit the whole candle wheel. And so this is actually a somewhat true story, or at least a legend, of how the Advent wreath came into being. If you read a little bit more about it, of course, there's the pre-Christian pagan roots of sort of putting greenery together and putting candles with it. But this is a sweet little story of sort of how this came to be. And if you go into some Christian churches at this time of year, or even Christian households, people will light an Advent wreath every year. And I'm going to light the candles that would be lit today so you can see that. And the candles we light today are the first two purple candles. So you'll see one has been burned down, which would have been last week, and then we'll add the one for this week.
And now let's do our UU affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Emerson UU encourages and challenges all who gather here to stretch ourselves, to live with more gratitude and generosity of spirit. All of the world's faith traditions have had the goal of bringing us closer to a higher power through acts of compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. This month, as part of our commitment to our UU value of generosity, we are sharing the offering plate with UUA Disaster Relief Fund. From natural disasters like wildfires and hurricanes that bring destruction to collapsing infrastructure, our congregations, our people, and our communities sustain the impact. Disaster Relief Fund grants are designed to respond to widespread damage that has received a disaster declaration from FEMA or local government sources. Donations can be made at donate.emersonuuc.org or using the Breeze CHMS mobile app and selecting Sunday offering. If you're writing a check, please make checks payable to Emerson UU Church and write "share the plate" in the memo. And if you would like to make a payment on a pledge, please write "pledge" in the memo instead. Our offerings will now gratefully be received. Thank you.
receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
A journey from feeling frazzled to feeling more peace, from skepticism to connection, from doubt to becoming a believer. As a busy mom of two, an active volunteer in our UU community and at my daughter's schools, and someone who juggles the ups and downs of ADHD, the idea of meditation used to feel impossible. My brain, sitting still, finding silence in my monkey mind? Are you kidding? It was laughable. I told myself meditation works for some people, but not my brain. Doesn't work for me. My brain isn't meant for it. And life has a way of nudging us towards change and growth. A few years ago, a good friend of mine gave me a copy of Dan Harris's 10% Happier. And after feeling very scattered, reactive, and overwhelmed, I decided that it was worth a try to get this inner peace that I craved. She was a big believer in it and was always pushing me, so I thought, okay, I'll read this book. So Harris, a self-proclaimed skeptic, admitted to being an unwilling convert to meditation. His words spoke to me. Meditation is not stopping your thoughts. It's about learning how to relate to them differently. That reframed everything. It wasn't about having no thoughts or emptying my mind. Our minds are designed to think and problem solve. Asking your mind to stop thinking is like asking your heart to stop beating. It's just not going to happen. Harris was saying meditation is about creating space between the monkey chatter of the monkey mind and my reaction to it. I began with just 1 minute a day, and I set a timer. Sitting down and letting my mind do what it does. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it was a start. Around the same time, I found Thich Nhat Hanh's Peace is Every Step, where he reminds us, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. I started breathing intentionally, noticing the inhale, noticing the exhale, even in the middle of a chaotic to-do list or in a traffic jam. Over time, something subtle began to shift. My ADHD brain, which had always felt like a pinball machine, began to find moments of stillness. Not perfect stillness, but moments. Thich Nhat Hanh also wrote in The Blooming of a Lotus, when we practice mindful breathing, we are not only nourishing the peace and joy within us, but also helping them grow. I clung to this idea, the idea that with practice, I could nourish peace and joy. Incidentally, I also learned that when we lose focus and we bring it back to our breath, we actually create more gray matter. We are growing our brain. So it's not a fail, it's a success. So we can nourish our brain in addition to peace and joy. Meditation did not fix my ADHD or magically simplify my life or make me some kind of Zen master. But it gave me tools to meet my busy days with more patience, to notice the joy in small moments, and maybe most importantly, to be kinder to myself. And if you're someone who thinks meditation isn't for you, I get it, I was there. But I want to leave you with one last thought from Dan Harris. Even if you're 10% happier, that's a pretty good return on investment. So to all of us, busy UU parents, multitaskers, and seekers, may we find our breath, our anchor, and the courage to keep practicing peace, even in the chaos or dancing raspberries.
Thank you, Melissa. These are the joys and sorrows, celebrations, and worries that were written in our book of life today. Melissa Marote writes, please send healing to my Aunt Bay, who was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. B, thank you. She lives in West Virginia. I want to thank Louise, and then Renee writes, I want to thank Louise and the fundraising committee for all their energy and good cheer and hard work. David Early is very happy to report that his mother, Joanne, has been with his sister Mary in her new independent living studio apartment since Thursday and is loving it. Louise Rovner writes, please keep my good friend Sharon in your hearts as her husband and our friend Barry died this Friday. And Mary wishes good thoughts for her 3 sons. And I'll now read what was written in our virtual book of life. From Jim Wallace, he says, officially retired this week. How come I seem to be even busier? I swear the chores have been waiting years for this. Nicole writes both a joy and a sorrow. The joy, my brother-in-law and his spouse will be visiting us from across the pond next week. Like many remote family relationships, their visit does not come without some trepidation, which merely serves to tell me we all have work to do. I'm grateful then our adult children, who are so easily absent themselves from these occasions, have chosen to be present to build connections. And a sorrow, our Pam Randall is in the hospital due to increased asthma attacks complicated by stress, and they suspect an infection. She is attending this morning online. Pam, we all wish you a speedy recovery and are so glad to connect with you while you are in the hospital. And Nicole writes that. I'm going to ring our singing bowl, and I invite you to say the names of those who are on your hearts out loud. I invite you to join me in a moment of silence. This is a prayer by the Benedictine nun and peace activist Mary Lou Kanowski. I bow to the sacred in all creation. May my spirit fill the world with beauty and wonder. May my mind seek truth with humility and openness. May my heart forgive without limit. May my love for friend, enemy, and outcast be without measure. May my needs be few and my living simple. May my actions bear witness to the suffering of others. May my hands never harm a living being. May my steps stay on the journey of justice. May my tongue speak for those who are poor without fear of the powerful. May my prayers rise with patient discontent until no child is hungry. May my life's work be a passion for peace and nonviolence. May my soul rejoice in the present moment. May my imagination overcome death and despair with new possibility. May I risk reputation, comfort, and security to bring this hope to the children. All of this we pray. May it be so. Amen. I now invite our choir director, Eloise, to come up, and she's going to introduce the anthem that the choir is going to sing.
Good morning. Our choir anthem today is an arrangement of I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, which is hymn number 240 in our gray hymnal. It is a 19th century carol based on the poem Christmas Bells by Unitarian Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Written during the Civil War, it is still relevant to us, speaking of the longing for peace and justice in a world marked by violence, war, and pain. Longfellow was beloved in his time. His was a life of fame, position, and wealth, but also of great tragedy. His first wife died following a miscarriage, which caused him much grief. 8 years later, he remarried a woman with whom he had 5 children. In July 1861, she died in a tragic fire accident when he was also severely burned trying to save her. I was reminded with the candles this morning of how that happened, but she was dealing with candles and sealing wax. So he was left with the care of their children. 2 years later, their eldest son, age 19 at the time, ran away to become a private in the Union Army against his father's wishes. 7 months later, in November, he was seriously wounded. His father was disconsolate. On Christmas Day, he wrote this poem. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong. Sorry. For hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then imagine Longfellow pulling himself together, affirming his Unitarian belief in the benevolence of God. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. At this holiday season, may we find peace within. May we work toward peace and justice in our families, communities, and the world. Blessings of the season.
Thank you so much, choir. When Eloise told me they were doing that song, I thought for a second, I said, that name sounds really familiar. And then I realized, yes, it's a Unitarian who wrote that. It's always nice to know that, right? So I have a degree in conflict analysis and resolution. And I'll be honest, this sounds more fancy and useful than it actually is. And people assume two different things when they hear this. Sometimes they assume I will expertly fix any interpersonal or organizational conflict they have. And I've seen this in churches and with my friends. And the other thing people sometimes assume is that I know everything about world conflict. Please explain how peace in the Middle East will be achieved, they say. The truth is that my degree taught me more about world conflict than it did about interpersonal conflict, and never did we ever learn how to fix anything. But it did teach me some things I think are important as we talk about peace on the second Sunday in Advent. The first principle or concept we were always taught in each of our classes was that conflict is inevitable. Conflict is inevitable, unavoidable, bound to happen. Whenever you get a group of humans together, there will be conflict. The problem comes when conflict is dealt with through violence or oppression. The other thing I learned, though not always explicitly stated, was that war and conflict often happen when needs are not being met. Classes on conflict will often get out Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow suggests that needs are a pyramid, and that at the pyramid's base include food and water and sleep, and must be met before people can move on to needs higher up on the hierarchy. After fulfilling these fundamental needs, people move on to the needs of safety and security, and then belonging and love, and then esteem. Finally, once all these lower level needs are met, Maslow suggests that people move on to the need at the peak of the pyramid, which is known as self-actualization, achieving one's full potential. More modern readings on this theory add another level, self-transcendence, an ability to find or make meaning of the world. Critics say that this hierarchy is classist. To think that someone struggling with food insecurity can't have or will neglect loving relationships seems to reduce people to just being poor, or say that people aren't capable of being more than one thing at a time. I've appreciated scholars who flatten the pyramid, or at least say nothing is really exclusive. My first understanding of how a lack of basic needs causes conflict came from a movie. And maybe we should do this as a sacred cinema sometime. Our professor showed the film Paradise Now, which is from the 2000s, and it depicts the journey of two Palestinian friends who have been convinced to become suicide bombers. The film depicts their last several days. What's striking about it is how it shows the economic situation of these men in the movie. One has lost a father to the conflict, and both struggle to find meaningful work and deal with the poverty that they're under. You feel in the movie the lack of hope in their situation. I became well aware that desperate people do desperate things. People are sometimes put in a position where the only option that seems available is violence. It's sad. To solve conflict, to solve war, it often means that we have to give people other options, alternatives, especially when it feels like there aren't any. One of the conflicts I studied in school was the Naxalite rebels in India. And it doesn't often get much coverage here in the United States or in the international press, but it's a conflict that's been going on for over 57 years in India. And Maoist rebels in a couple of poor rural Indian states in India have been staging attacks on the government for these 57 years. The Maoists are mostly from what are called tribals, small native groups, often geographically isolated, with distinct cultures and languages. The Maoist ideals have taken a foothold in these places because many tribes have seen their forest taken away and either harvested for timber or for farmland. They also experience some of the worst poverty in India. According to the World Bank, for scheduled tribes, which is the name the government has given them, approximately 54% of children under the age of 5 are stunted, 55% are underweight, and 28% experience wasting. It's no wonder that a promise of an equal society which provides for everyone has gotten traction among these folks. When it feels like the government isn't helping, you face discrimination because of caste, and large portions of your people are starving, it's not surprising that violent rebellion feels like the only option in some of these places. One of my major realizations was that conflict studies, peace studies, was in no way isolated from social justice. That the fight against discrimination and for basic needs was one of the major ways to bring peace. Perhaps this is part of why I was called to ministry, a realization that some of the major problems in the world would take social justice, systematic solutions, not just peacekeepers or mediators. I wanted to be a part of making people's lives easier and improving all of our welfare, and maybe bring some peace while doing that. And here we find ourselves. Advent is about waiting. It is a season of waiting for Jesus' birth at Christmas and a season in the Christian tradition of preparing ourselves spiritually and waiting for God to make the world anew. Hope is the first candle of the Advent wreath, that's the shorter one there, and peace is the second, which would be the taller one at the moment that's burning. There are 3 purple candles, hope, peace, and joy, and a pink candle, love. And then sort of short in the middle there is a white candle, which some people put in the Advent wreath to represent Christ on Christmas, the birth of Christ on Christmas. The inclusion of peace in the season of Advent likely comes from the early gospel accounts of the birth of Jesus. Here is Luke chapter 1, verses 76 through 79 as a part of the prophecy from Zechariah about Jesus' birth. And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare his way, to give people knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of sin. Because of the tender mercy of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us, to shine upon those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet in the way of peace. And then in the second chapter, when Jesus is born, an angel proclaims, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those with whom he favors." Though to be honest, I kind of wish Luke hadn't included that last part. Among those who he favors. Our Universalist predecessors would have likely yelled, "He favors everyone." I like the peace on earth, though, and though some scholars would say that it actually means goodwill among people. I think it's kind of the same thing. Bryce Laughery, a Christian theological blogger, dissects Luke and points out that conservative Christians often gloss over that first chapter in Luke in favor for the second. They like the favors language sometimes. Laughery goes on to say that throughout Luke, there is an understanding that Jesus' vision of peace cannot be achieved without equality. I tend to agree. It's hard to imagine peace if oppression means there is still not enough food to go around, or if land is still being stolen from indigenous groups. How, though, do we think about this in our current political situation? Perhaps in the case of Israel and Palestine, this paradigm makes sense. The state of Israel has long oppressed Palestinians, and much of their motivation comes from desperation for a better life for themselves and their children. But we also have Russia's war in Ukraine. That's on our minds too. And a war that began to gain more territory and created more suffering and oppression in the process. This is less of a question of haves and have-nots and perhaps an old-fashioned conflict of one ruler wanting more power than another. And I'll be honest, my realization, my reflection from school doesn't fit here. Instead, we seem to be repeating a pattern of narcissistic rulers wanting more power. Something quite like Caesar Augustus in Jesus' time. Rulers that aren't concerned with helping the poor and oppressed, but instead just their own egos. Perhaps the same type of leader we're looking at for the next 4 years in America. So how do we have hope for peace in this holiday season? What does it mean to light a candle this week for peace? Some Christians use this candle as a time to reflect on their own inner peace. That's important, I think. If we are dysregulated and disconnected, it's hard to imagine that we can do really good work for other people. We may, in fact, cause more harm than good if we're not working on our own inner peace. And I like that Melissa so elegantly talked about how if we work on our own inner peace, it can help us feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more spiritual, even when we might have really, really busy lives. I'm also a fan of Dan Harris's 10% Happier. It's a good book if you haven't read it yet. And I also believe we have to do both, though. Both the inner work and the outer work that I've been talking about for most of this sermon. I think Jesus would agree with that. The candle of peace is not just a wish for peace within ourselves or even peace in our relationships with God or with some higher deity. But our relationship with peace should recognize that peace means justice for all. In my mind, the peace candle, and perhaps all the candles, peace, joy, love, hope, are justice candles. A reminder that the one coming at Christmas is not just a savior for some, but a prophet that brings a message of justice and peace for all. Peace for all. Beloveds, thinking about peace in this time is hard. I'm not going to deny that. It feels so far away at the moment. But I want to remind us that peace is not just asking for an end to war, but also the work that folks here are doing every day for equality and justice and for the basic needs of all, even just our collecting of food. Justice and peace go hand in hand. So may we continue to do that work in this Advent season. May we continue to do that work on this Sunday of Advent, this Sunday of peace. May it be so. Amen. And our closing hymn this morning is simple, so we're going to sing it 3 times, I think. That sounds good. It's called Nothing But Peace Is Enough, and it's by a very prolific UU hymn writer, Jim Scott. So you're invited to rise as you're willing and able.
Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me.
If you'd like, maybe it's elbows or hands. Maybe you want to give yourself a hug. I like that too sometimes. Let us remember that as we celebrate peace and love and joy and hope, that intertwined in all of that is our continued work for more equality, more justice, and the needs of everyone. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. Thank you.
Should I blow out these candles?
Or if you want to.
Okay.
Created all the smoke.
That was beautiful.
Fun. You did the inner piece and like we.
That was
played off each other nicely.
That was really great.
Thank
reflection.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you.